as well as people's well-being and the planet's sustainability. However, if I had to really drill down, I would say that at the core of all of this is the competitiveness of our firms, and hence the long-term competitiveness of the EU economy. At a European level, we will support every initiative to restore our single market to pre-COVID conditions, and even further complete it. And I think the Franco-German non-paper issued last week seems to be chartering an approach towards this revision. We will work hard to ensure that key policies, such as the upcoming revised industrial strategy, and indeed the common agricultural policy, put us in a position to enhance the incredible potential of the now inevitable green and digital transitions. Finally, and most importantly, a resilient Europe is a global Europe. Let's keep our continent open for business and prosperity. The trade policy review published last week underlines that the EU must be assertive to defend the construction of a level playing field for European entrepreneurs, workers, and consumers, and resist protectionist pressures to promote better and more open trade. Better and more open trade. In the light of this, we must continue to seek trade agreements that give necessary space to our companies to expand and sell their products and services overseas. This must, of course, not come at the price of our single market, and therefore effective mechanisms to protect standards and quality are a must. I understand that this could sometimes be problematic for specific sectors, such as even the agricultural sector, where markets are often fragile. However, I remain convinced that it is by reaching out that we will create more value and attract more investment. The turn of events in the United States and the presidential changes paved the way to revive EU-US relations. President Biden on Friday at the Munich conference said that America is back, the transatlantic alliance is back. He described the partnership between Europe and the United States as the cornerstone of all we hope to accomplish in the 21st century. I believe now that the EU and the US now have a previously unhoped for opportunity to develop a joint vision on how to secure their interests as liberal democratic powers as the foundation for the future common trade agenda. Last but not least, China. After 7 years and over 30 rounds of negotiations, the EU and China have finally, in principle, agreed to an investment agreement. Whilst admitting that the devil will be in the detail, I have no doubt, we firmly believe that an investment deal is at this time the most promising way of deepening cooperation between China and the EU. With this agreement, both sides have showed their strategic confidence in opening up new space for cooperation. Dear friends and colleagues, in the spirit of working together for a stronger Europe, I believe that there is work to be done on the conference on the future of Europe. I think it is our priority to ensure that this does not turn into some kind of massive boomerang, where a lot of hype is created and very little value is produced. I must admit that I am still somewhat skeptical of this initiative, and the initial skirmishes between the institutions do not fill me with a lot of confidence. My personal wish is to see a process undertaken that will reach out to citizens in the street, the farmer in Poland, the industrialist in Germany, the shop owner in Italy, and the innovator in Sweden, that we will truly be able to grasp what they want from the EU and that we can translate this into a European Union that counts. And I believe that it is here that we together can play a pivotal role. With these words, I want to thank you for your kind attention, and of course, I look forward to a constructive debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefano, for kicking us off here in this virtual room with about 100 representatives from the employers' organizations across Europe and those following on the live stream, and for setting the scene really for this debate. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor first to Valeria Ronzitti to present the views of of SGI Europe with regard to shaping the post-COVID recovery. So Valeria, the floor is yours. I hope you can hear me, as you indicate in the chat that there is a bit of a problem, but maybe somebody can alert Valeria that she has the floor now.
Yes. Mrs. Ronzitti, please press the button speak.
Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't hear Sandra before me, so I don't know what she said, but I suppose she was introducing SGI Europe. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. So SGI Europe is indeed the former CEP. We changed name in December, so very recently, in order indeed to make our name more fit to the 21st challenges. We were before Centre Européen des Entreprises Publiques, founded in 1961, and many things happened since then. So there was the urgency to make our name more fit to today's agenda. And the very bulk of today's agenda is, in our view, to build back better. Indeed, whatever discussion we make, whatever legislative proposal we discuss, we have to consider it against the background of the pandemic. That, fortunately, is giving us some light. I mean, the winter forecast recently published give us some hope about figures in terms of growth in Europe, but we are far from being at the pre-crisis level. In this picture, SGI providers, our members, since the start had, is difficult to say like this, but in a way, the privilege not to be a sector very much touched in terms of jobs and closures, lockdown, because services of general interest had to function at the same pace, at the same level of quality and accessibility to all citizens at an even increased pace when it comes to healthcare, energy provision, water provision. So we were really in the middle of ensuring the sustainability of the European system and being those that had to prove resilience. I say this because our approach to the recovery is starting from, in a way, a privileged point, because we were since the start able to look to the medium and long-term horizon, contrary to many other sectors like commerce that will speak after me, that are now faced with the urgency of making sure shops are not closed and that people, there are not massive layoffs. So in this way, we can guarantee this medium to long-term vision. And part of it is really the fact that is the chance or never for Europe to change paradigm. It would be completely mistaken to try and get back to previous way of doing business or previous way of considering the internal market. Let's use this crisis as a great opportunity to improve the stake of Europe internally and also in the external world, as Stefano said. In this respect, I absolutely value and find precious in this time the forum and the platform that the Group 1 in the EESC can give us. And I would really like to thank Stefano for his idea of increasing meeting and exchange with CEOs and those who live the real life of businesses every day. In a way, I am a messenger, but I'm not the important person here. The important person are my members who can bring solution on the ground every day. So the more we can increase this exchange, the better. I think is really adding value to the debate. how we are shaping this contribution from the Service of General Interest point of view is around three mainstream. The first one is to make sure that the recovery is an SGI-friendly recovery. This means assisting our members on the ground, but also having intense exchange with Recover, the task force within the Secretariat General of the European Commission, to make sure that really the recovery plans shaped by member states and governments take the opportunity to boost the green and digital recovery. We have too many examples of member states that are tempted to go for quick fix for projects that are not really innovative in terms of green and digital. And this is something that we have to fight, because our members have the capacity, have already a lot of plans that go in that direction and can ensure the long-term transformation of Europe, thanks to the unprecedented amount of money that comes from Europe. So let's use it for really a long-term sustainable Europe we want to create. Then the other big strand is fight even more than before to ensure that legislation that comes from Europe is business friendly. And here, unfortunately, there is still a lot to do. We are working mainly on two strands. One is to the Fit for Future platform. I believe that many of you are members through their organization, but also the Economic and Social Committee as such is member. And this platform can be a great opportunity or can have a boomerang effect. The great opportunity would be that we are able to use this platform to influence the foresight approach of the Commission. Is a new approach. They try to implement a real business plan in order to foresee and facilitate predictability also in terms of future investment or future legislation. But we can only succeed this if there are enough actors to guide the European Commission into lifting red tape and access to finance, which is something that impede our members to flourish still. So my plea is to really be present as Group 1 in the work of the Fit for Future platform and heavily contribute to what the European Economic and Social Committee is going to say there, because, I mean, you have to find the equilibrium between the three groups, and it's not always easy. And then another big strand of work on which I would really like to call for a contribution and a cooperation with Group 1 is all the work on sustainable finance. I have been until now, just before reaching you, on the only open event that, the first open event that the platform on sustainable finance organized today. We are a member of it, and we are very concerned about the result that this work will have on enterprises and their capacity to invest. I know that the Economic and Social Committee is not a member, and that is why I would like to use our presence there and the one of other employers to increase the awareness of the Employers Group 1 and the work of the committee as a whole on the consequences that sustainable finance and taxonomy will have on the capacity of enterprises to invest. Here again is something that can be a great opportunity if well used, but it can represent a danger in our capacity to invest for the future if we are blocked by a kind of trend by the European Commission that would like to set very strict criteria, even though voluntary, for a business or a company to be considered green enough to be appealing and interesting for investors. So it's really, really a game changer for the future. And if I can, in my usual pragmatic and working style mode, I take up the fact that Stefano wants to invite more and more CEO from companies to your meetings. Let's organize something where this CEO, with the support of the EESC Group 1, can confront and challenge both the Commission and the investors on the benefit of taxonomy, because there is a lot of hidden agenda that is going on, and I think employers need to be much stronger in challenging the idea of the Commission and financial investors in this field. And then there is the big chapter of the Conference on the Future of Europe, that again risks to be a very big communication event if we do not take the lead. I know that in your plenary you will have the discussion with Commissioner Suica later today, and the message has to be clear that it's not the time for talks from Brussels to Brussels. Citizens need to see the clear result of the European project, and the Conference of the Future of Europe in this very moment needs to be the message that Europe is there for the ground, for the local level. So again, is something where we employers need to raise our voice on about the fact that we need to see concrete solution and contribution out of Brussels, and so it would be a mistake to spend even financial means from Europe to organize a big talk shop. We need to have something concrete, and we are the one on the ground that can mobilize members to have clear dialogues that will then have a result in the final shape of the conference, in the final result. So we can be the guarantor of this concreteness, and that's why we are investing in the conference. I do it both through SGI Europe and the European Movement International, of which I'm vice president since November, and I'm trying there too to bring the business perspective that is sometimes lacking in the discussion around the Conference on the Future of Europe. So this is a quick panorama, and I'm glad to come back to you afterwards.
Thank you very much, Valeria. I hope you can hear perhaps now, and I sincerely hope that the other speakers are able to hear me too. So I would like to give the floor now to Pekka. Please, if you could try and stick to about 5 minutes so that members have the possibility to engage with all of you afterwards. The floor is yours, Pekka.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope that you can see me. It seems that... can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we cannot see you.
Yes, sir. Can you enable your camera, please? Thank you.
I don't know what's going on. I tried to enable that, but it just doesn't. It doesn't take it. Oh, let's see. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for the nice invitation. I will stick to the 5 minutes that you asked me to do, Sandra. My apologies for being a couple of minutes late. You said that I have been working through and lived through a couple of crises, and for instance, today it seems that we have a couple of crises per day as a minimum. So clearly, European Union is a magnet for all sorts of trouble coming, stirring in the world, and then most people would expect the solutions to be found at the EU level. When you talk about COVID-19 and future Europe, I'd like to underline very much the actual work that has been done by the whole value chain within the EU over the past year or so. We have had some major market disruptions. Some sectors have almost completely collapsed. We have had consumption changes. We have had changes where the consumers buy the foodstuffs and the groceries. This has had substantial economic impact on the range of the product categories and how they generate value for all partners in the value chain. But overall, we can say that we managed to maintain steady supply of high quality, nutritious, safe, affordable, and sustainable food for hundreds of millions of citizens. And this is something that we are very proud of. It is a joint effort of millions of people all along with the value chain. It's very much about farmers, agricultural cooperatives, agricultural employees, our partners in private business, private processors, wholesalers, retailers, and HoReCa sector, and their continued efforts to keep things as stable as possible. We certainly showed some good resilience together, and the word resilience is something that I would like to come back to on Future of Europe. Also, we have worked in employers' issues that, as you could imagine, we have been extremely concerned of the developments on agricultural seasonal labor force, employees' mobility, the movements across the borders, and this was actually a major bottleneck in the very beginning of the crisis last year. And consequently, we have been working also with our partners in the social sector, which is something that we haven't seen that much in the past, but especially with our Copa-Cogeca agricultural employers organization has actually committed itself and worked together with, for instance, EFAT on guidelines on agricultural employers protection measures. This was welcomed by EU institutions, the European Commission and member states. We also put out a statement together with Food Drink Europe and EFAT once again on vaccination quite recently, because we saw this as an opportunity also to valorize European added value, especially in that particular sector. So how vaccination could enable our seasonal workers, agricultural employees to move across the borders. Could we do something about it to use this as a tool to facilitate the movement? And last week, our organization Copa-Cogeca also co-signed a pact on skills, lifelong learning, and upskilling. So these are some of the most recent developments which have been actually promoted by the recent ongoing COVID-19 crisis. But when we look at the recovery, I think it's fair to say that we need to continue what we have been doing so far. So we don't reinvent the wheel, but we need to invest into our production, making it more sustainable, more efficient, more productive. We have to respect the societal demands. And this is a real challenge because especially the markets, the famous EU common market is basically the source of that future prosperity and income for our young. It is also about the EU infrastructure, and this needs to be coordinated at the EU level, especially when it comes to certain new development that actually would enable farmers to be more efficient in their production role. And by this I mean, for instance, broadband, and of course parallel to more physical investments such as infrastructure for transport. But it is also important that we maintain the consistency between the common policies, especially when it comes to trade. This is one of the reasons why we quite recently have questioned the reasons for Mercosur agreement, because especially the Green Deal has put some major issues on the table of the farming community and other stakeholders in the value chain, and how these should be taken into account in that particular trade environment. It is not in line with our expectations for European farming community, and this is the reason why my members have been quite active on this quite recently. But it's also about what Valeria pointed out, that it's not about talking from Brussels to Brussels, but it is about the citizens. And this now with the recent development on social media, it seems that the EU policies need to justify their existence every day anew to each of those citizens. And I take only one good example, that is the recent talks on vaccines. Most people couldn't care less what the European Union would do in some purchases or common purchases that they see relevant. But this time, this is different. And I have a feeling that this will have an impact on the European future development, how the European Union is seen, with the positive and negative impacts of it. But then we need to recognize that it is very much about justifying our European common policies, making sure that they actually have a positive impact to the lives of the citizens, 500 million of them. We are very committed to this work in the agriculture sector. We have one of the first common policy areas that the European Union implemented, and we're very proud of that. but it doesn't go for free. We need to make sure that investments in the EU, also in political sphere, are maintained, and therefore we call upon strong policies also in agri-food chain, where we actually show the difference to the citizens and also those millions of people who operate within that same value chain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pekka. Indeed, I think it's really worth to mention again that the food sector kept going without major hitches. I mean, we have seen a bit in terms of cross-border workers and things, but overall, I think it's really worth mentioning that the sector kept producing and kept supermarket shelves full. So I think indeed it shows not only the importance, but also the resilience of the sector and the need to continue investing in it. And now the third contribution comes from a sector that is rather hard hit, as I said before, and in that regard, different from the other two that we've heard about just now. So Christian, the floor is yours on your experiences and your views.
Thank you very much, Sandra, and Stefano, also for the invitation and for the introduction, for having this session. For us, it is very important. We're also very pleased to see strengthened cooperation with the EESC and particularly with the Employers Group. I mean, we're very pleased to see actually the group being strengthened with many of our friends and people we do know well from our members, and the important role that you play there. I'd like to spend just indeed a few minutes to keep it short, to leave time for questions about indeed the impact on the sector for a few minutes, as you alluded to, Sandra, and then specifically talk about the recovery and how we see it important for the sector, but also for all European citizens. The impact of COVID on the retail and wholesale sector has been, I describe very much a bit a tale of two cities. I think we've been hardly hit, but there are some very significant differences. Of course, as Pekka alluded to, the people, the retailers selling food, and of course also the pure players are selling all kinds of goods online, have had good business continuity in terms of sales. I want to stress also what Pekka said, that how the supply chain from the farmers to the retailers and the manufacturers have worked towards this important resilience, and it was not obvious, because when we saw what happened a year ago in March, when with borders potentially being closed and people actually doing a massive hoarding at the stores, so there was a lot of in a way, it was a bit of a roller coaster for all of us in the business, but the system has stood and provided the essential, and providing the essential services and the essential goods to all the European citizens, and that is, I think, was very, very important. And I don't think we can say that was the case in other parts of the world. Also, the European Commission has played a very significant role in that, in keeping borders open for seasonal working in the agriculture, but also for transport and delivery. I mean, when you need to have fruit and vegetables coming from the south of Spain and reaching retailers in Sweden, it is very important that borders are kept open. And I think we see, unfortunately, also some quite significant negative signs of borders being closed again, which is very worrisome. Of course, there is the other side of retailer, and this is still 60% of sales in terms of turnover, is the shops that selling clothes, opticals, jewelries, have had a very, very hard time because of the government restrictions measures, have had to close down. In some countries, the shops are still closed, very much a little bit like the HoReCa sectors. I think we share quite a significant issues there. And of course, with HoReCa closed, the people that are in wholesale and providing foods to the HoReCas also have been very, very hardly hit. So it is very important in order for the resilience of the sectors, and I'll explain why that is important, that the support measures that have been put in place will continue until we see some signs of recovery. which means that these are mostly at national level, but the furlough schemes, the state aid schemes, sort of relaxation that enables enough support for the sector, that the specificities of the retail and wholesale sector is recognized. I mean, this is a sector with very narrow margin, but very high turnover. So some of the limits there do not work in terms of being eligible for some state aids there as well. So those are quite important. It's a mixture of EU measures and also national measures, and that we all can also learn a little bit, from one another, that it is possible to maintain and manage, stores with sufficiently safety measures. A number of our national association have developed protocols for continue to do properly shopping whilst keeping the safety measures. So that is quite important to maintain those substances. Then the next, of course, is to ensure that we have a recovery. And in the recovery, it is very important that the retailers is recognized as an ecosystem, as it has been, as one of the 14 ecosystems by the European Commission, a system on its own, because with its own specificities, high numbers of SMEs, very high levels of employment, and also the very important, the anchorage with the local communities. When the stores are closed and when the restaurants and cafes are closed, the center of the cities, becomes basically a ghost town. So the retails and wholesales play a very important sector. And that is why we've also called for a European Pact for Commerce with 10 investment measures and 10 policy measures that basically should achieve, 4 main goals. That is very much in line with the policy goals of the European institutions and the von der Leyen agenda, if we can call it that way. The first one is to help converting all retail and wholesale to omni-channel. So it's all the digital transformation of the resales. In Europe, 2 out of 3 shops still don't have a website. And we have seen in the crisis that those business operations that had an online offering, that had already gone into this digital conversion, were doing better or were suffering less than those that did not have that. So continue to convert the digitalization is very important. So this is an issue of infrastructure, but also an important issue of helping locally everyone to move into the digital space, also in terms of being fully omni-channel retailer and wholesalers. The second goal is to make the Green Deal a reality in wholesale and retail. And that means that actually supporting, retail and wholesalers have taken leadership on a number of issues in terms of converting refrigerant gases, in terms of moving towards renewable energy, in terms of eco-design of products, in terms of addressing issues like food waste. This needs to be continued. The retail and wholesale sector is very much willing to be part of that, and this is everything from the circular economy to the chemical strategy to the farm to fork strategy. But of course, we have to also make it work, and I think Pekka has alluded to some of the challenge that all of the sectors have in the supply chain to make that happen. The third point is make sure that we do everything to support local employment and communities. The store will continue to play a fundamental role. Online plays a role, but it is clear and everyone recognizes that the future is about omni-channel, and that therefore a store and a shop has to play a fundamental role in the center of our towns, in the center of our villages, for economical but also for social reasons. And last but not least is to keep the markets open and to fostering trade. Trade remains important both within the EU as well as at the global level. So it is very important that whilst there is a trend towards more local sourcings, towards favoring shorter supply chains, that we also use all the opportunities for that open trades provides in providing choices, providing better prices. It is very important that the open markets that we have within Europe as a single market, but also more generally, more globally, remains that the opportunities is there. This will generate economic benefits and also benefits for consumers. So I'll leave it there, but closing the message to say we really want to continue to work more closely with the Economic Employment, European Economic and Social Committee, and particularly the Employers Group, and look forward to further collaboration with you and with the team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian. So we have about 10 minutes or so. For those members that would like to intervene, ask a question, I would like to ask you now to raise your hand or click on your raise your hand button. I have two people already. The first is Maurizio Reale. Oh, wow, yeah, now we are 5, and I think I have to close the list by now already. So the first one is Maurizio, the floor is yours.
Non la sentiamo. Potrebbe abilitare il microfono, per favore?
Sì, fatto.
Ah, yes, sorry. I was just thanking Sandra, and I'd like to thank our speakers for joining us in our group meeting. Their position and their approach is very important. I share the approach outlined by Stefano, and what we've heard from our speakers also suggests that we are going on the right lines here. I'm also sure, as Mr. Pekka Pesonen said, that the food and agricultural sector is extremely important. This role has been made ever clearer, if it was necessary, during the pandemic that we continue to live through. It's a sector that deserves attention, particularly when we talk about recovery-related initiatives. Transparency, balance, sustainability, the supply chain, markets. These are all the key words for us to do well here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maurizio. I will basically ask all the members to do their interventions and then go back to the speakers so that all of you can contribute or answer sort of in bulk. So the next one is Xavier Gonzalo Lobo, followed by Milena. So the floor is yours. So, yeah.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you. And thank you all the guests for sharing their views here with us. Well, I've got two short questions to my dearest friend, Christian Verschueren, regarding the retail sector. I mean, there is no doubt about the huge participation of the food retail sector on trying to have a continuously operation to literally feed the citizens and to open their stores. But there is a dark side of all of this process is the non-food retail sector. Those companies are suffering a lot. And speaking for Portugal, for example, it is very difficult to sustain this kind of operations. My question is, how can we as a group reinforce the need for establish new support systems, financial support systems to those companies that are suffering and that are very important for business in Europe? I mean, shopping online, of course, it's an option and it's important. There is no doubt about the need to change to the web, to the websites, and to going in digital, but the brick and mortar stores will suffer, and this situation will continue for many years, I would say. So what's your view on this, and how can we as a group support this the member states on realizing that there is a need for financial investment to support these companies, especially the SMEs? Thank you.
Thank you. The next one then is Milena Angelova, followed by Josep Rocamora. So Milena, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sandra, and I appreciate the insights brought by the three speakers before. I would like to pick up on 2 points. First of all, is the increasing pressure on when it comes to social issues, as we now struggling with the minimum wage directive, which has a lot of problems, even though they are disregarded by some of our colleagues. And next week we are expecting the pay transparency directive, which I have been told that it will be even worse. So I would suggest that we structure better our cooperation to give really answer together on these proposals. And my second question goes to Valeria and Ronzitti for what can be further done to strengthen the service of general interest, because the social care services were highlighted as the most enabling conditions also for teleworking and in times of such crisis as the current one. Thank you very much.
Great, Milena. Now, Josep, the floor is yours.
Sí, muchas gracias, Sandra.
Yes, thank you, Sandra. 2 questions, very quickly. It's the food and agriculture sector has responded to the crisis very well. But apart from traditional policies such as the CAP, I think we ought to be facilitating many other funds, such as the New Generation and other cross-cutting policies, in order to rebalance the urban world and the rural world. There are options to look at other business activity outside urban areas. So my second question is about the Green Deal strategy, including biodiversity and farm to fork. If they aren't well applied, then they will hurt the competitivity of food and agri businesses in Europe. So what do you think can be done to deal with this sort of ecological burden which is hurting our competitiveness? Thank you.
Thank you. And now the last one already in this very short round is Dragica Martinovic. Here you go.
Do you hear me now? Hear me?
Yes, we do hear you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Sandra. Thank you very much to the speakers of this in this debate. I'm very happy to see Christian, even though online after some time. And actually, I just want to go back to last spring, a year ago, when we saw how essential and how much we appreciate our small retail supermarkets or shops. When the first wave hit us and when there was so much uncertainty, well, there still is, but then we didn't know what was happening and how much I appreciated that my little supermarket worked and the people came in to work. At that time, I thought it was very brave, and how actually the retail sector has managed to overcome the problems of lack of stocks and the hoardings that we all did. My question is, how do you see now different measures at the border that some member states are applying inside the EU, and they're not harmonized, so that they're limiting non-essential travel, and this is affecting also transport sector, and this is, I presume, affecting the supply of shops and the wholesale. And I would like to see how you see that. And I see the Commission is exerting pressure on some member states, but they still tend to do their own thing. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. And for answering them, maybe let's swap the order and let's get started with Christian, because a number of questions anyways went to your direction. And then I will give the floor to Pekka and then at the end to Valeria.
Thank you very much, Sandra, and thank you for all those questions. And good to see you all there. And I mean, just to answer very briefly on the questions that are particularly targeted to me, and also the one on minimum wage from Milena. So Gonzalo, first, it's great to I think what can the EU do and what can governments do? I mean, first of all, we clearly see that there is a need for, as I mentioned, for continuing smart measures for the short term, and those are in terms of continuing, furlough scheme, and various governments have done measures extended until the end or middle of this year or a bit later. So it's quite important that we can continue to make sure that when consumption goes back on track, people can regain a little bit the employees that they've had and that they've trained, and there is not huge rises in unemployment. I mean, this is basically an extension of the Kurzarbeit schemes that were developed years ago in Germany, and that proven actually quite good in terms of getting a quicker recovery after the crisis. Related to that, there's also other measures. Indeed, I mentioned state aid. Everyone knows that actually retail is a sector where you have high fixed cost in terms of people, but also in terms of paying the rents. That is also an issue. Some governments have or some countries have found reasonable agreements between the real estate industries and the retailers in terms of extending scheme for supporting paying the rents. I think it's a huge fixed cost, and when the stores have closed, it doesn't bring any revenue. When you're in fashion, you have to pay your collections a year in advance, so that's also part of that. So there's a lot of issue in terms of cash flow for the sector, whereby the governments can play a role. And then longer term is indeed converting the people to go online, and this will of course take time. I mean, it is not done overnight. Those retailers that have gone online have done the necessary investment in terms of infrastructure, in terms of people, know that this is something that takes some time. But what we have seen as well is that the investment have been accelerated in the same time as the sales have been accelerated online. But also, we've seen a number of companies that had the cash to do that, made those investments in order to really accelerate the online conversion. Dragica, in terms of viewpoint, good to see you as well. Yes, of course, we all would like to have European, EU harmonized measures. We see it on a number of issues. When it comes to, of course, the health situation, we know that this is much more difficult because it's a national competence. But even you look, when people are said, why can we not have an EU issues? You look at almost every EU country has a fragmented approach at national level. The Germans have it, every land has its own systems. Italy is divided in 3 zones. Belgium has the regions. So you see that because, and sometimes there's also some reasons for that. I mean, the series of the health pandemic is not equal in every region. I mean, in France, we see huge issues around Nice and the south of France, and some parts of the east of the west, but not in others. So I think it is, of course, preferable that there is harmonized measures, and we, of course, support that. But the reality is also that it's sometimes not possible to have those. One last point on minimum wage. We're very much aligned with all the positions from all the employers' organization. We believe that this matters. It remains part of the autonomy of the social partners, and that subsidiarity has to be respected. So I think that is something where we are fully in line and will support what you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. You also all receive a lot of supportive measures in the chat, messages in the chat. Just to let you know that there's a lot of, common ground here, and a lot of willingness to work together and to advance our joint concerns. So the next is Pekka, please.
Thank you very much, and very much in line with what Christian just said. I would like to echo his comments concerning the need for harmonization, and which we have been recommended, especially when it comes to certain let's say, critical labor force movement across the borders, but then we need to recognize the national, sometimes regional competence, and that's the difficult part between the two extremes. Then on the Green Deal, we have, as an organization, we have supported the principles of the Green Deal. It's more to do with how. And this is what I meant also in the consistency, because if we go for aggressive policies on, for instance, biodiversity, which actually brings the elements and the actions very much to the ground, to the farms, to the actual physical action, it would be counterproductive if we didn't take this into account in our imports. So technically speaking, we need to talk about how the same foodstuffs may have been produced in, for instance, Brazil, that may have been produced in France. And if our citizens and our consumers say that, well, we prefer that you do this in this manner, then it is obvious choice for the farming community to say that, okay, we can do that, but can you make sure that we can do this also in consistent manner in the competing countries, and that actually have better access now to the European Union market? So it's more to do with how rather than if. Thank you.
Thank you, Pekka. And now the last 2-3 minutes for you, Valeria, so that Stefano has a couple of minutes left to follow up and give his reply on the various actions that have been proposed. So, Valeria, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and you cut me if I'm too long. In general, I would say that this discussion is also good about the fact that together we can be able to think out of the box, as Stefano said at the very beginning. And I want to give you an example from my organization. We have presented to the European Commission a strategy on rethinking services of general interest. Part of it is really to see how in critical situations like the pandemic, there should be even expansion of the definition of services of general interest to those sectors that are not considered as such, but are absolutely vital for the survival of our society, and the provision of food is one of that. So it's also the way to better cooperate among each other, to encourage the European Commission to be more creative in times of pandemic. And this goes also in line with the battle we are doing for an expansion of the definition on SMEs, in order to include also our members that have some of the criteria complied, but not all of them. Then answering specifically to the question, Milena, two issues, both minimum wage and pay transparency, are an example of how sometimes the European Commission does not live in the real world, in the sense that those are two proposals that come at a very critical moment for Europe economy. And I think that our joint efforts needs to be challenging the legal basis of both these initiatives. I agree with you that the proposal on pay transparency risks to be even more burdensome than the one on minimum wage. So let's start working together from the very start. I know you're doing a great job on minimum wage. We have to join forces on pay transparency too. For social services, this is one of my daily battle, because still those are seen as a matter of cost and not as a matter of investment by many stakeholders. My main aim is to make clear also in the action plan on the European Pillar of Social Rights that those services can create jobs and are a motor for competitiveness and growth at the European level. And finally, on the Green Deal, I think we are all aligned about the fact that we have to speak about the how and not the if. We are very pragmatic. We are in favor of the Green Deal. We think that this is the growth strategy for Europe for the future, but there is a lot to discuss on the how. We have to have a realistic and consistent approach, a level playing field for us to invest in green, and we are working for that.
Thank you very much, Valeria. So I give the floor back to Stefano, who has the more or less impossible task to kind of wrap up and give some maybe outlook on how we can actually take up all those good proposals for cooperation. Stefano, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sandra, and a special thanks to Valeria and Pekka, who I believe are still with us, and of course to Christian, who had to leave. I think this was a very interesting debate with a number of very important aspects touched upon, and I think we all agree on what the agenda ahead of us is. I like the comment by Valeria that the Commission doesn't live in the real world, which sometimes does really seem so. But beyond that, my commitment is that we will continue to look for opportunities to work together, and more concretely, over the coming, let's say, days and a couple of weeks, we will come with specific proposals on organizing events together on the items that we have identified today. So thank you once again, and this, as always, has been a very useful and interesting discussion. So I